With a modular, you have full control over your signal path. This means you can combine modules and functions like oscillators, VCAs and modulation sources in different ways again and again. If you're aware of a few key features, you can even build and expand a small system so it can be used in different ways. From using all your modules together to patch one massive flexible studio monosynth to using those same modules to create multiple voices. To add interest, texture and dynamics to a multi-voice setup, you need less than you might think. I'll be using my small system to demo a bunch of concepts. This is a very powerful system though, and I won't use all its modules and features. Here's the core concept. A lot of people will start with modular, building a more traditional synth. Let's say a synth voice with 2 oscillators, a mixer, filter and VCA. If you go for a classic setup, that will have one envelope for the filter and one envelope for the VCA and an LFO or 2 for some quality modulation. That classic setup is a very powerful studio synth voice. I filmed multiple videos with patches for just these ingredients. With 2 oscillators, you can do things like classic FM and sync patches, and the 4 modulators are enough for a lot of creativity. However, when you want to build a system that's also suitable as a multi-voice setup, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. The first thing is a quad VCA. I talked about that many times and I often recommend a quad VCA as one of your first modules. You can look at this video for more information about that. But it's crucial in the patches and ideas for this video. Related to that is the mixer. If you get a nice utility mixer like this one, you open your system for a lot of creative signal flow. This module can mix audio but also CV signals, and it can function as an inverter as well. And finally, if you want multiple good sounding voices, you need to add a second filter. In this system I use a full low pass filter, but if you want to enjoy this concept on a low budget or small space, a single or dual low pass gate is a great tool to consider. In combination with a good utility tool, they also turn any setup into a multi-voice system. With these tools, you can reorganize the classic big mono synth and create 2 single oscillator, filter, VCA voices, each with an envelope modulating the filter and VCA at the same time, and a single LFO, for example, modulating the filter for a bit of movement. These voices can be controlled in any way you want. In this video, 2 synced sequencers are used. Even though these voices are simple, they can sound great. However, this simple patch can make both voices feel quite static and isolated, as there's just a bit too less going on. In this video, I will go over a series of ideas you can use to spice up a simple dual voice setup without adding more ingredients. If you like to support my work or you want to get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I used in my videos, have a look at my Patreon. You can also support my channel through affiliate links in the video description. But now, let's dive right in. A single envelope and LFO per voice sounds very limiting, but with a modular you can get creative. The solution is cross-patching. By using simple multiples or stackable patch cables, you can create more complex and shifting modulation patterns. A very simple example, starting from the basic 2-voice setup, is making multiplications of both LFO signals and using those to modulate the frequency of the other LFO. This creates more dynamic shifting LFO patterns for each voice. Another example is using the LFOs to cross-modulate the shape or decay of the envelopes. Of course, you can combine that with cross-LFO frequency modulation. These subtle additions will keep melodies more interesting for a longer time. In these patches, I mostly stick to common CV inputs, but always explore whatever modulation inputs your setup has. And remember, you can multiply modulation signals as often as you like. Here, the 2 LFOs are used to modulate the pulse width and wave shape of the other voice, beside the filter and envelope shape. You can utilize the same trick with envelopes. Here's the basic setup again, but this time the envelopes are multiplied and used to cross-modulate the LFO frequencies. Creating different patterns or divisions for the sequencers adds a lot to this patch, as it triggers the envelopes with a more interesting pattern. Of course, you don't have to mirror voice modulation. Here are the basic voices again. To bring some shifting modulation to each voice, a copy of LFO1 is modulating the pulse width of the slower voice 2, and the slower envelope of voice 2 is modulating a bit crush-like parameter on the filter of voice 1. Before I bring in VCAs to add complexity, remember simple mixers are another easy way to add depth to modulation. Here, each LFO is sent through a mixer before modulating its own filter. This way, each other LFO can be added to the mix. On top of that, a copy of each LFO is modulating the frequency of the other. Because mixers with attenuverters are used in this setup, each LFO can have an inverse effect on the voices. When you add VCAs to the setup, you can explore more complex modulation ideas. Here's the basic setup again, with sequencer and envelope modulating the filter and VCA of the voices. Instead of symmetrical modulation, a single LFO is used to modulate the filter of voice 1. And to add shifting depth to that voice, the second LFO is used to modulate the wave shape. To create interest in the second voice, a copy of the first envelope is sent to a VCA and on to modulate the filter of the second voice. The second LFO is used to modulate the VCA, fading double envelope modulation in and out. This works great with slow, mellow sequences. Here, two VCAs are used to create cross FM. A copy or alternate waveform of each oscillator is sent to the input of a VCA, used to control the depth of FM to the other voice. The two LFOs are modulating the FM depth, creating interesting textures in the sound. To add more depth and shifting movement to the voices, each LFO is modulating the filter of the opposite voice it's controlling the FM depth for. So, FM depth and filter movement are controlled with two different LFOs. Instead of oscillator frequency modulation, you can try or combine audio rate filter frequency modulation as well. As always, you can use simple CV mixers if your filter doesn't have enough CV inputs. I generally have to keep these demos quick and effective to finish videos on time, but I wanted to explore this specific patch more. After a while, I ended up slowing the sequences down and made another copy of each LFO and used them to modulate the envelope shapes. This sound is a good example of what I want to achieve with this video. Simple ingredients that make up a sound that doesn't sound like a simple LFO with envelope per voice. If you're interested in interesting cross-patching, it's worth it to invest in things like crossfaders or panners down the road. But even with limited ingredients, you can get a lot done. Here are the same two voices again, with standard envelope modulation. A single medium-speed LFO is multiplied and sent to two VCAs before modulating both filters. To turn this setup into a panner, swinging the signal between the two voices, the second slow LFO is modulating one VCA directly and the other through an inverter. If the modulation to one voice goes up, the other goes down and the other way around. To add extra depth, the slow LFO is modulating the speed of the panned LFO slightly. In this demo, the voices are panned hard left and right. Here's a panner variation. In this setup, a slow sequence is used for the second voice, triggering a slow envelope modulating both voices at the same time. A faster sequence is used for the first voice, triggering a plucky envelope sent to two VCAs for a panner setup. The VCA outputs are sent to modulate the filters of both voices. A single LFO is modulating one VCA in a regular and one VCA in an inverted way, swinging the faster envelope from voice to voice. The second LFO is used to modulate the shape of the faster envelope for some variation. If you start to see the amount of possibilities with these simple ingredients, you might think, hang on, can't I include the sequencer's CV signal to add more modulation depth to these patches? And you'd be right. If you'd like to learn more about that, have a look here. And as always, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching and see you next time.